The first experience of this night was shared by someone who preferred to stay anonymous. This is what they told me. A few years ago, I went through a horrible depression. It started after the loss of a very close family member. I began to distance myself from people I knew, and my social life practically disappeared. I deteriorated so much that even my neighbors started to notice. They hadn't seen me as often as before, and when they would greet me in the street, they would comment on it. Of course, I would just tell them I had a lot of things to take care of. At the time, I lived in middle-class apartments, not luxurious, but I was doing fine. One day, a neighbor visited me. She was an elderly woman who lived in the same hallway as I did. We always had friendly conversations. She would sometimes give me gentle sermons about my life and about my depression. She encouraged me to get back to how I used to be, and she kept emphasizing that I shouldn't drift away from God. Then she started talking to me about a small church she attended, something I hadn't even heard about. She insisted that one day I should go with her. After several invitations, and because I felt too uncomfortable to refuse any kind of help, I finally agreed. I thought maybe it could actually do me good. One day, just before midday, she came by and we walked there together. After about 20 minutes, we arrived. It seemed strange to me at first, but later I learned that some Christian churches set themselves up in places like storage units. And yes, this was basically a storage space, fairly medium-sized. It was definitely a Christian church. I started going more often, partly because I felt sorry for her. She didn't have anyone else to go with, and it also helped distract me. One day, they welcomed a new pastor. He was a man in his 40s, serious but genuinely kind. He paid close attention to the community and knew a lot about Bible passages. He won everyone over quickly. The elderly woman I had been going with was completely captivated by him. Honestly, I couldn't blame her. He really did seem like a gentleman. However, as time passed, days and weeks, changes began happening in the church. One of the changes was that services started getting later and later. At first it was just a little later. Then the hours kept shifting until they stretched into the night, and sometimes went on well past midnight, almost until 12. I stopped going because of this. My job made it impossible to be out that late, and besides, I didn't get a good feeling from it. It wasn't long after I stopped attending when other members, people I recognized only from seeing around, began approaching me outside my workplace. Then outside my school, and when I was even more concerned, they started showing up near my apartment. They told me that something very bad would happen to me if I didn't keep going, and that no one would be able to protect me. I got fed up. I threatened to file a restraining order, and they backed off immediately. I never saw them again. At the same time, my neighbor, the elderly woman, started looking worse every time I saw her. More disheveled, thinner, and visibly exhausted. You know how someone looks when they haven't rested or slept enough. Sometimes I would visit her, and I noticed her apartment getting emptier. There was less food, too. When I could, I helped her with whatever I managed to bring. One day, I visited her and told her that I didn't like the new pastor or the position he'd taken in the church. That was one of the reasons I stopped going. When I said this, she became furious. She was extremely upset. I had never seen her like that. She didn't say anything at first. Her expression and the way she was breathing said everything. She stood up, drove me out of her apartment, and she never opened her door to me again. A few nights later, I was coming back from work. I walked along the streets before reaching the building where I lived. That's when I started to feel like someone was following me. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone. So I told myself it was probably just my imagination, until, at the corner near my apartment building, I ran into that pastor. He recognized me instantly and started talking to me like nothing was wrong. I told him I couldn't attend anymore because of work, and he insisted heavily that whenever I wanted, I could go to his house. While we spoke, I realized he wasn't wearing anything religious, No cross necklace, no rosary, nothing like that. I didn't know much about these things, but I at least felt something was off. It wasn't the same vibe we had in church. No, it felt different, wrong. I excused myself, saying I was too tired and that I really needed to go home. He took my hand and told me, "Take care, because the evil is everywhere." Then he kissed my hand and smiled in a very eerie way. That night, I had terrible nightmares. I remember dreaming about that so-called beast associated with Satan. Beside it was that same pastor, both of them sitting in huge chairs like thrones, talking and laughing. Then both of them turned their gaze toward me. Slowly, they began to come closer, and I woke up immediately. I panicked and turned on every light in my apartment. I was truly terrified. I started praying. Then, suddenly, I smelled something, like something was burning. It was unmistakable. I stopped my prayers and searched the entire apartment quickly, but I didn't find anything. Outside, it didn't seem like anyone was talking about a fire or anything like that. So I thought maybe someone had burned some paper or trash, or something similar. I left it alone for the rest of that night. The next day, right before I was about to leave, I saw a lot of activity in the elderly woman's apartment. The landlord was standing at the door. I asked him what had happened, and he told me that the woman had unfortunately passed away the night before. I looked inside briefly, and I realized she hardly had any belongings left. There were almost no furniture pieces or appliances. Little by little, she'd been left with nothing. When I asked the landlord if they had been able to contact her family, he told me that the pastor of that church showed up by chance only a few minutes after he found out. The pastor told him he would handle everything himself. I knew something was suspicious. A few days later, I found out that whatever little inheritance she had was left to that pastor. When I learned that, I wanted to file a complaint, but when I went there, I realized some members of that church worked with people in the authorities. So of course, nothing would be done, and I would put myself in danger. That's when I decided to move out and leave everything behind. Years later, I found out through a friend of a friend, someone who had also been part of it, that it was a cult dedicated to a demon. She didn't tell me exactly which demon, but she said they made deals with it in exchange for the lives of certain members, and in return they gained wealth and benefits. I didn't want to know any more. I'm just grateful that I left in time.